Okay, wait a sec, wait a second. Our world is completely obsessed with intellectual property. Everyone is obsessed with protecting ideas. We spend most of our time going out of our way to not share our best ideas with others unless we absolutely have to and we have no choice. Now, why would you tell someone who's got this great experience and great ideas in particular to go out and do completely the opposite? Hi, welcome to Off the Record Climate Edition. This is the podcast about what's hot in climate tech and everything playing out behind the scenes. Incredible job seekers are struggling to break into climate, while climate tech companies are totally overwhelmed by huge numbers of high quality AI supported applicants. Skander Garroum's solution? If you want to break through, give away your best ideas. Seriously. Today, we're going to talk about why and how the current process is failing both job seekers and companies, how to craft a great challenge that puts you on the radar and why this is so effective. And finally, the three kinds of challenges you can put together yourself to break through. We desperately need to move as many great people into climate as we possibly can. If you're one of these people and you want to find out how to make this happen, stick around and find out. Hi, I'm Jordy Gold.
And I'm Skander Garroum.
Skander, off the top in the intro, I was talking about how it's so important. We need to get lots of amazing people from all across the economy to move into the climate space. This is why you decided to focus your entire company on this challenge. It's why I'm literally working on a whole different second podcast about this exact same topic. And yet, somehow this whole process is not really working very well. In fact, it's going quite badly.
So we have one coin and we have two sides to that coin. On one side, we have all these incredible people who, had great careers, who want to have great careers, and for the next chapter of their career, they want to fight climate change. Really important. And on the other side of the coin, you have all these companies who need to hire the right people at the right time. And in between, you have this whole application process that is insanely broken. And that is not just climate, this is happening everywhere. Obviously, AI is a factor, right? AI hasn't made it as easy as possible to apply to hundreds of roles with essentially one click. And companies are thus getting hundreds and hundreds of applicants because it just got so easy. On the other side, AI is not really great at finding the right person in that pile so far, right? So there's AI screening applications, there's processes for it, but how do you let an algorithm decide which human to interview if it's about so many implicit things, culture fit, experience fit, things you don't even know so far because climate companies are trying new things.
And so the good news here, at least, is that you've written an article on how we can fix this entire situation, or at least help individuals try to have a better experience and make this go a whole lot better. And the thing is, your main recommendation in this article runs completely counter to what I think just about anyone might expect.
Well, so interestingly, it was written for the one side of the coin. It was written for applicants to essentially signal themselves out of that crowd of people who are just blindly applying. But we found out that a lot of other people, all across, from hiring managers to company leaders, are really, really interested in it. The whole pitch is how to get a job by giving away your best ideas, and we call that the challenge.
Okay, wait a second. Our world is completely obsessed with intellectual property. Everyone is obsessed with protecting ideas. We spend most of our time going out of our way to not share our best ideas with others unless we absolutely have to and we have no choice. Now, why would you tell someone who's got this great experience and great ideas in particular to go out and do completely the opposite?
So the core problem out there is that you have a noise versus signal problem. How do you signal that you're the perfect fit if there's hundreds of other applicants that have a comparable or even a better fitting experience, perhaps even just on paper, because they already worked in a specific industry? The way that you do that is that you signal the strongest that you possibly can. You share what you know, what makes you unique that no AI and no other human could have, because you are you and you have a very specific set of experiences, right? And you need to then format it so that it speaks for itself. Because a real human will not look at your application if there's hundreds of applications, but a real human might read your deep dive on whatever it is, your challenge and your solution and your experiences.
Gotcha, gotcha. And before we keep going, I think the really important sort of detail we should probably mention is about how you are working with a co-founder and started up Climate Drift, which is totally related to this entire conversation.
Yes, we wouldn't have like we wouldn't be talking about this if it wouldn't be for Climate Drift. So Climate Drift. Long story short, we are a couple of founders. Marco came from the world of how do we get more people into tech, and I came from the hiring lens because I hired a few hundred people for my last few companies, and the focus was always how can we get more senior professionals, people with like 10, 15, 20 years of experience in different industries into climate. Now we have a community, we have an executive program, we have a couple of other programs, we have got a newsletter, we have got a podcast. It's essentially a company with a whole lot of media around it at this point.
I probably should mention I did the program. I absolutely loved it. Based on my experience in the program, you and I have launched this podcast. I've got a whole other podcast in the works. It's about how to get a job in climate by learning from those people who've already transitioned and who are doing incredible things. We'll definitely let you know more about that when it's time. But so solving this problem really is not new for you at all. You totally know what you're talking about.
I hope I know what I'm talking about. We've been at this for like 3-ish years now. We worked with over 300 people. It's what we focus on. It's our life. So we also just launched a couple of new programs because we're learning all the time. We try to improve what we're doing, and we try to offer new things for people to actually get a leg up and find the role in climate that they want.
Well, it's really cool to hear about the new programs. I know that you've seen this approach you're recommending. You've seen it work over and over again. I think probably the best thing we could do, maybe you could share some of the stories of some of the people who published these challenges and then wound up giving away their best ideas and got jobs in the process.
Yeah, so I will try to think about a couple of like examples that fit in, right? So the core problem is you apply for a job or you meet someone at a conference, and if they don't know who you are, you need to tell them essentially your whole life story, right? The problem if you have 10 years of experience is try to summarize that in a sentence or two. That gets really, really hard, right? Jordi, please try that for yourself.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I ran a lot of big campaigns. That's my short form.
Yes, but that's a very short form, right? Like a couple of big campaigns doesn't tell me like what exactly did you do for each of these campaigns, or are these even campaigns that I might know about, right? So like this is kind of like a good example of please look up Jordi and all the awesome campaigns he worked on. Another example would be Laura. Laura Miller was a marketing lead at Airbnb. She built the ambassador program for Airbnb Experience from 0 to 3,000 people. So completely from scratch to very big scale. Obviously, 10, 15 years of experience. She done tons of other things in marketing. Worked with a lot of different companies, ran all kinds of campaigns, but this is like one specific experience that you can package really nicely and make into something like, hey, do you want to build an ambassador program? This is my guide on how it works based on all the experience that I have building ambassador programs.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So for someone who's at a big company, big brand, works on something very public, has a skill set that a lot of people know about, knows how that transfers, I totally see how that could work for Laura. Now, I'm just curious though, there are some people who aren't exactly in that position. Now, what happens if that person says that's something that's not as well known, or maybe is under an NDA, or has a skill set people don't understand quite as well? Do you have any stories there of people in that situation and sort of how they could handle that?
So there's a lot of generalists who want to shift into climate. So this one goes out for all of you. So this is a story of Jonathan. He worked in partnerships at the Gates Foundation for like more than 10 years. And everybody who knows what partnerships are, I don't, right? Like partnerships are you work between different stakeholders. You could do a lot of things in the end. And it obviously gets more complicated because he signed a lot of NDAs on what kind of projects he was working on. So first time I talked to him and I said, tell me one story. He was like, I did some awesome things, but I can't talk about it. So that's very, very true. And that hits very, very, very concretely. But what he has now is a very specific lens and skill set on how he sees the world. So how about we take this like lens and skill set, actually apply it to the problems that we have in climate? In his case, he was taking that partnership approach. How do stakeholders fit together? How is a is an economy being built and applied it to the very specific problem of the sustainable airplane fuel world. And it's he built like a beautiful guide out of it. It's his perspective on partnerships, on stakeholders in sustainable airplane fuels. It's an outside-in perspective on an industry hasn't worked in so far, but with his very concrete perspective and skill set.
So I actually interviewed Jonathan for that other podcast that I mentioned. I honestly don't think you could find a better champion for climate drift and this particular approach of giving away your best ideas. Jonathan is super impressive. He did some amazing things at the Gates Foundation. And literally through the entire interview, he couldn't stop saying all these great things about you, about Marco, about the climate drift community. And in particular, he went into great detail talking about how working on this challenge, giving away his best ideas, how that process and that product really played a huge role in helping him to move into the sustainable aviation fuel space and where he landed a really cool job. So now here's the thing. I'm sure there's one big question people listening must be thinking right now is, do you have any idea how many people have actually done these challenges? And then of those people who've done the challenges, how many have actually landed jobs in the process?
Around 50 people have published challenges over the last year, and roughly like 30 of them landed jobs specifically through their challenge.
That's not bad. 30 out of 50 is pretty good. I'm sure this leads people to ask the next question. Of those 20 people who did challenges, who didn't land jobs, any idea how things played out for those people?
It's a learning process. Like this is what I strongly believe in, right? So I think there's a lot of like positive outcomes. Perhaps I can just tell like one little example so you get my idea, right? There's a drifty called Nick. Nick comes from a finance background, an operations background, and first time we talked, it turned out he would be a really great fit for this whole like first of a kind financing world, right? Like first time we set up large scale factories and we need to blend a lot of different finance sources together. And he wrote a challenge on it, right? Like he researched, he talked to like the most relevant people in the space. He used that challenge actually to really establish himself, made a panel discussion around it, over 200 people attended. And then, after talking to everyone and like having zero understanding what a first of a kind project is to like being on a panel talking about first of a kind, he realized the first of a kind world wasn't for him. So he pivoted and he did a second challenge. And then 6 months later, he published a second challenge on corporate transition plans. And that then led to a job in a company consulting corporates on how to build their transition plans.
So that's really encouraging. So you got someone here who did a challenge at first. It didn't work out, but actually it helped him a lot. So people are writing challenges, even if they don't instantly get a job, they get a lot out of the process. It moves them forward on their path. It really still helps them break into climate and ultimately actually still land jobs, which is really the most important part. So you kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but takes us to the next step, which is really, what does a challenge actually look like?
So a challenge essentially is anything that helps your idea into a format that you can send to other people and that other people can benefit from. They can read or watch or listen to it. So it can be like as a format, it can be a long form essay, it can be a presentation, it can be a video, it can be a podcast. This year is, to be fair, your little challenge. So Jordy's challenge is making a podcast. Whatever gets your skill set and your perspective out, and the more tactical, the better. It's always a balance. Like the more value it brings to an audience, the better.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense. And yes, I definitely do think of these two podcasts I'm working on as my own unique challenge. It's been a lot of fun and I'm getting a lot out of it. So looking at this then, bottom line is really you pick whatever approach suits you. You get your thinking out there. You show people what you're capable of. You show people how you might help solve their problems. Now, when you do a challenge, I think you said it accomplishes about 4 different things. What are those 4 things?
Okay, so number one should be a real challenge, and a real challenge means it is a bottleneck for a specific climate solution or a specific climate industry, right? The Jonathan example again. What are currently the stakeholders in the sustainable airplane fuel world? Like who's talking with whom and what are their incentives? That would be one. The LoRa problem, here would be very, very obviously go to market, right? Like you want to have more customers. You think about different go to market channels. You think about ambassador programs. How do you set something like that up? How do you incentivize the people, et cetera, et cetera? And that kind of like leads to like the second thing. It needs to translate your skills. Like if you don't have a marketing background, you want to write a marketing challenge, you should have some kind of backing to actually tackle the problem that you want to tackle, right? Like Jonathan had partnership background, so he understood well how to understand different stakeholders and how to get them to a table. Laura had a great understanding of how to run marketing and ambassador programs. So it should clearly translate and be like pegged to your skill. And then, you need to target a specific audience, because in the end, it's about delivering value, right? And you cannot deliver value for the whole climate world. You need to think about, okay, like this specific audience, marketing teams in B2B climate companies, what do they need? What do they struggle with? What would help them the most right now? And the last thing is, people need to see your work and they need to be impressed. They need to understand, they need to be helped, and they need to be able to find you. So the whole like media part of it, of like taking what you actually did and like putting it into little snippets and sending it out there, is also really, really important.
All very logical. Now, you've identified, I think, 3 different kinds of challenges. Could you tell us about each one and some examples of sort of what kinds of challenges or people's experience fits into each?
So there's I think like an unlimited number of potential like challenge approaches that you can go for. This is just like our framework on how we can simplify it. So the first is kind of like an outside in view. You look at a specific industry for the first time. It's kind of, like when you look at a website for the first time and you try to understand what a company is doing, you form an opinion very immediately. Like if you build a lot of websites, or if you're a marketing person, you have a different opinion than if you're like a software engineer and you look at like, how quickly the site is built, for example. In our examples that we brought before, the Jonathan example would be a very, very typical outside in. He didn't work in a sustainable airplane fuel industry so far. He looked into it and he tried to map it from like an outside perspective. Then like that's option number 1. Option number 2 is like working on a specific industry question, right? The Nick example I think is a great example. You think about what is in industry wide a problem. It's how do you cross the chasm? How do you actually build your first of a kind factory? How do you finance it? And this is one very specific one where you can come in and like try to deliver a solution, right? The Laura one is even more straightforward. You're a marketing team. You're thinking about new marketing channels. You think about ambassador program. It gives you an actual checklist to run through, an actual program to run through, right? And then last but not least, you can be very, very niche and very specific. We had, for example, Joseph De Natale. He's an operations guy, and he looked into different operational pipelines and problems. And one that he found was heat pumps, right? And the main question he had is like, why are we not deploying more heat pumps in the US? And he looked at it from a super strong like operational lens, right? And he built a beautiful challenge out of it. And now he actually works at Jetson deploying heat pumps and helping set up the operations for a very beautiful heat pump company.
Very cool. Funny little story. So Jetson happens to be based here in Canada, where I am. I happen to be reading the newspaper in the last maybe 2-3 weeks and happened to notice that they landed a new round of funding, and was just learning about their company and what was going on there. And I found out about all of that long before I even knew who Joseph was, or that he was at Jetson, or that he was connected to Climate Drift, or that he'd done a challenge. I literally had no idea. So it was really cool just sort of seeing all of this come together. Now, in your article, you cover some really great insights and you dive a lot sort of deeper into this concept. Now, could you maybe explain why this approach works so well?
I think it's easiest to understand if you ever worked in sales or marketing or any go-to-market function, to be fair. It's exactly the same playbook. So you create a piece of collateral, right? A one-pager, something like a website, like something that's replicable, best case scenario with a clear URL or a clear PDF that you can send people to. Like something that shows it's a clear case study about your work. And that is just like by itself so superior to anything else, because you already packaged this case study from your perspective and with your experiences. So you're showing stuff. You're not making claims. You're actually showing of what you already did or what you could potentially do. So instead of talking about how much you care about climate, it would be nice if I could understand your company more. You actually try to help problems proactively. And we hear that from drifties all the time who take their challenge and approach companies. Cool, like I've seen your work. You've already done the homework. We don't need to talk about like the basic 101 of what our company is doing or what the space is doing. We can directly jump into the problems. And that is what you bring. And this in the end also in total like brings compounding returns, right? Like somebody sees it, finds it valuable, forwards it. Well-written challenges go viral in a specific industry. And that also helps you not explain yourself over and over again because people already have context because they already read what you've been doing. You build it once, you send it out, as many times as you want, and it keeps working, while you sleep. And like the last thing is probably it makes you legible. So the right people can quickly understand what you bring to the table and why it matters to them. Or better, like what you bring to the table and then perhaps they should work with you. And that obviously also builds your network. So when we send out Laura's challenge, we already target like a few hundred decision makers in climate marketing. So like, essentially the perfect target audience for her because she works in marketing. She had something that helps marketeers, and this is also what we essentially tell everyone who works with us on a challenge: identify who you want to talk with, like identify who you want to work with, and this is your perfect audience.
Wow, that sounds pretty perfect. Now, this approach really does seem to accomplish a lot of things at once, but you do say that this strategy does involve one uncomfortable truth.
Yeah, it's not easy. Like that's the honest answer. Like it takes real time and work, right? And like every example that I mentioned, like Laura, Jonathan, Nick, Joseph, right? Like they all sat down for multiple weeks. They went through multiple iterations. It's a 2 week minimum job, but it might be 5 or 6 weeks or more, right? And it's like research, it's writing, it's refining. It needs to be the best it can be for like the specific problem that you're working on.
Yeah, doing something like this takes a lot of real commitment. Now, here's the thing. In talking to people over the years, I've heard this so many times. It's a job to go out and get a job. It is not a straightforward, simple, easy thing. And the thing is, people spin their tires and put in a tremendous amount of effort or time or hope at doing things that oftentimes aren't that effective or aren't that helpful. So here's the thing. I've talked to a lot of people who went through Climate Drift through your program. I've talked to a bunch of people who didn't go through Climate Drift. The thing they have in common is these people all managed to transition into climate. They all managed to land really great jobs in the climate space. So whether someone follows your specific strategy and does a challenge or they don't, every single one of these people told me the exact same thing. You got to put in the work. You got to take the time and put in that effort. And the thing is unless you're a complete rock star or you're crazy lucky or both, you got to do the work. And so you're going to do it one way or another, or maybe you're going to be less successful finding what you'd like to find one way or another. Now, in the article, you outline 6 different steps people can take while doing an actual challenge. I don't think we're going to go through every detail right now in the podcast. We'll definitely post a link for the article. People can go check out the whole thing. But maybe you give people a sense of what are some of those things people might do to get started.
I think it starts with the problems that you want to tackle. And for that, you need to like actively listen for problems. Like every time you listen to a podcast, and I'm a very big fan of like, all the awesome interview podcasts that exists out there in climate world. But also everything else, right? Or the workshops you can attend, other challenges you can read, the Substacks, whatever. So try to look for problems. This is where it starts because you need to understand which climate solution area do you want to be in, energy, transportation, whatever it is. Which role are you aiming for? And then you need to go deep into what the actual problems are, so you can figure out how you can help.
Now, anyone anywhere could do a challenge, and maybe anyone looking to break into climate should do a challenge. But there are some advantages to joining the Climate Drift community, doing the program, and doing a challenge directly with you. Maybe you could share a little bit on that.
So I'm a huge fan of everyone writing challenges because we have so many problems in climate and so much still to do, and the quicker we can get people working on this, the better it gets. Doing climate drift because I believe it's the highest leverage thing that I can do, helping people shift into climate. And for obviously people who want to work with us, we wrote the playbook. We have dozens of stories in our head. Every time, we talk to someone, we see different archetypes. Long story short, we have experiences that we can then transfer to, okay, like you should focus on that, not that. Second part is community. So you can do it also by yourself, obviously, but it gets hard. Like it gets hard doing like the third rewrite of a problem or being stuck. It gets hard once you want to hit publish and you want to get like last minute feedback. So having like an active group of actual peers, people with like as much experience as you, potentially more, that are actually going through the same process is huge. And then it takes a lot of motivation to get started, right? Like to go through the hard parts, to get the support that you need at the right time, right? And just like keep going. And like the last part is like our megaphone, like essentially, right? Like what we will try to do if we work with us on a challenge is we will send it out. You might have 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. We have way more, and we would take your challenge and then blast it out wherever we can, be it our Substack, with like over 10,000 decision makers on the list, and an over 50% open rate, be it our LinkedIn. The reach like can be very large, and that's exactly the focus, right? Like you try to deliver the best challenge possible, we try to boost you.
Yeah. Yeah. All these resources are super helpful. The climate drift community is very deep, super strong, a whole bunch of different super impressive drifties, as we call people in the community, have all jumped in and have been helping with these podcasts. And I'm totally grateful for that. And given that you and I are totally benefiting from that megaphone you mentioned, every single time we do one of these episodes and push out this podcast, I have seen how well that works firsthand. It's a really nice thing to have. I think you're also working on a new executive program you mentioned, right?
Yeah, first out, obviously, shout out to everyone we've worked with so far and everyone who is also in our community. We've been focusing on launching our new executive programs, which is like specifically for people with like 10, 20 years of experience, one-on-one work, focus on like, understanding what are your most transferable experiences, getting them out there, and like, everything that we just talked about. Getting the word out, getting connected, making, the right transition. Like, I mean, the network helps, right? Like, we launched this little challenge of yours, this little podcast, and we had over like 1,000 downloads in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I didn't know if anyone would listen, and I didn't know the first thing about what are good numbers. I am talking to other podcasters who are saying apparently we're crushing it. Though that's a pretty good number of downloads to hit in 2 weeks with a brand new podcast like this. So pretty happy about that. Now we can see that this approach, this whole approach we've talked about, giving away your best ideas, trying to break into climate, it's a bit of an unexpected approach, but after talking through, it really does make a ton of sense. Now, if people want inspiration, if they want to see what we're talking about firsthand, they can always go to climatedrift.com and go check out the Substack. There's dozens of challenges on there. I really do hope a lot of good people will hear this and start publishing their own challenges and find their own way into climate. As we said, that's the thing really that matters here. We need to move a lot of good people into the space. And I do hope that a whole bunch of people also hear this and decide to jump in and be part of the climate drift program with you.
Our doors are open. We're obviously interviewing and working like filtering everyone that we can, but we don't use AI for it. To be fair, we actually still jump on a lot of screening calls, and I think that's also what's needed. Like we all need to jump in and make climate happen.
Yeah, I honestly, that personal touch, I think it makes the real difference. You guys have great judgment. You know what you're talking about. You know what good people look like, and that's what makes the community so great. Is that you're pulling in so many amazing individuals. Now, I also know that
Thank you very much.
of course, but I mean it. And the other piece here is that I've just seen how excited you get when you publish a new challenge for somebody. It's definitely one of your favorite things. I've seen when people land
100%,
new
one of my
roles,
favorites.
percent, and when those people go on and land these great roles, I've seen how excited you get. It's such a nice thing to see. So as we said, we will definitely be posting a link for the article so you can go out and find this, check out the Substack. If you do a challenge, let us know. put it in the comments, send it to us. We'd love to see what you come up with and how that helps you. And as always, if you liked what you heard, please do share this episode with your colleagues. Sign up for the Climate Drift newsletter. Make sure you subscribe,
follow, like the show.
And the give us the 5 stars. The 5-star review, also very important. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and we'll be back with another episode soon.